The holding cell was cold and smelled of antiseptic and despair. The man sat on the bare bench, his focus on the steady rhythm of his breathing. He had been taken from a frontier transport, a lone human on a route known for its lack of witnesses. His captors, a reclusive and cruel species known as the K3, valued entertainment of a particular kind. They enjoyed the degradation of other beings, especially those from younger races. Today's amusement was brought to him. 2 K3 guards, their chitinous forms clicking against the deck plates, dragged a figure into the cell and let it drop. It was a small, humanoid form, clad in tattered silvery garments. Her skin was a pale, almost luminous violet, marred by deep cracks that glowed a sickly, fading amber. She was curled into herself, her long, delicate fingers covering a face etched with pain and shame. The cracks were not just on her skin. They seemed to be a part of her essence, a literal shattering of her being. One guard placed a repair kit, a standard-issue medpack for basic mechanical prosthetics, on the floor with a dismissive clatter. "Fix it," the guard hissed, its voice like grinding stones. "You have until the next cycle, and we see if your work holds under stress." The implication was clear. They would break her again, and likely him alongside her, for their enjoyment. The door sealed shut. The man remained still for a long moment, listening to the faint, distressed hum emanating from the girl. It was not a sound heard with ears, but felt in the bones, a frequency of pure anguish. He moved slowly, approaching not as a mechanic to a broken device, but as one might approach a wounded animal. He knelt at a distance. "I will not harm you," he said, his voice low and steady. The girl flinched, a tremor running through her fragmented form. One large, dark eye peered through her fingers. The light within it was dim, nearly extinguished. "They gave me a kit," he said, gesturing to the crude tools. "But I do not think this is for your kind of hurt." He sat there, not moving closer, simply present. He began to talk. He spoke of Earth, not of its cities, but of its quiet things. He described the resilience of moss growing on sun-worn stone, the way a shattered seashell could still be beautiful, the patient, slow work of rivers smoothing rough edges over centuries. He spoke in calm, simple sentences. He did not ask questions. He simply offered the words, a steady stream of calm against the cell's oppressive silence. Slowly, over what felt like hours, the girl's trembling subsided. She uncurled slightly, revealing her face fully. The cracks were terrible, deep lines that pulsed with a strained light. She was alien, utterly so, yet the expression of suffering was universal. She made a small gesture with her hand, pointing weakly at the medpack, then at her own chest. A sad, pulsing flicker of light traveled from her heart to her fingertips. "It is not for flesh," the man said, understanding, "or for whatever you are made of. Your break is deeper." He opened the kit. It contained synth mesh, adhesive bonders, and micro-soldering tools, all for machinery. Useless here. But he had his own resources. He had his 2 hands, his focus, and a stubborn, human refusal to accept that something broken must remain so. "May I look?" he asked, his hands open and empty. The girl, after a long pause, gave a slow, slight nod. He moved closer. Up close, the damage was even more severe. The cracks were not merely surface wounds. They seemed to go all the way through her, as if she were a crystal figurine struck by a hammer. The amber light within her struggled to flow, pooling and stuttering at each fracture line. He did not touch her with the metal tools. Instead, he used his fingers, tracing the air just above the largest crack on her arm. He could feel a strange dissonance there, a chilling wrongness in the space around the injury. "Your light. It is trying to reach itself," he murmured. "But the path is blocked." He closed his eyes, thinking. The K3 wanted a spectacle of futile repair, followed by violent failure. They saw her as a broken toy, and him as a primitive fool. But humanity's strength was not in its technology alone. It was in its capacity to see a problem from an angle others missed. To mend not just with tools, but with will. He remembered the principle of kintsugi, the ancient art of repairing broken pottery with lacquer mixed with gold, embracing the breaks as part of the object's history. The break itself was not hidden. It was illuminated. The idea was not to restore to new, but to restore to wholeness with reverence for the damage sustained. He had no gold, no lacquer, but he had intention. He had attention, the most focused form of respect. "I am going to try something," he said. "It will not be with their tools." He placed his hands, warm and calloused, gently on either side of the crack on her arm. He did not try to push or seal. He simply held. He poured all his concentration into the space between his palms, imagining not a forced fusion, but a bridge. He envisioned the lost, amber light finding a new pathway, not by ignoring the crack, but by flowing across it, connecting from one edge to the other. He breathed slowly, steadily, a human rhythm in the silent, static-filled cell. For a long time, nothing happened. Then, a single faint spark of amber light jumped across the divide. It was weak, but it was a connection. The girl gasped, a sound like a tiny chime. Emboldened, he moved to the next fracture on her shoulder. He repeated the process. His brow grew damp with sweat. The effort was immense, not physical, but a profound mental and empathetic strain. He was not fixing her. He was acting as a guide, showing her own essence a way to reconnect. He was defying the reality of her shattered state by insisting, with quiet human tenacity, that wholeness was still possible. One by one, the major cracks began to stabilize. The sickly fading amber warmed, becoming a resilient, honeyed glow. The light began to flow more freely, pulsing in a slow, steady rhythm that mirrored the man's own heartbeat. The girl sat up straighter. The hum of anguish softened, transforming into a faint harmonic resonance. Suddenly, the cell door clanked open. The two K3 guards stood there, their multifaceted eyes taking in the scene. They saw the girl, still visibly cracked, but now glowing with a stable, inner light. They saw the human, exhausted but resolute, his hand still gently cradling her forearm. The med pack sat untouched. "The cycle is over," the lead guard stated, disappointment and cruelty in its tone. "The test begins." It raised a long, rod-like device that crackled with violent energy, designed to disrupt and shatter. It was aimed at the girl. The man did not hesitate. He moved, placing himself squarely between the device and the alien girl. He spread his arms, a ridiculously vulnerable gesture in the face of their technology. "No," he said, the words simple and absolute. The guard emitted a sound of derision. "Foolish flesh. You break first, then." It fired. The energy bolt struck the man in the chest. He cried out, collapsing to his knees as waves of disruptive agony coursed through him. It was a pain designed to disintegrate bonds, to sever connections, to shatter will. He convulsed, his teeth clenched. But he did not fall. He forced his head up, his eyes locking with the guards. Behind him, the alien girl stared, her own light flaring in alarm, and witnessed something she had never seen before. The K3 weapon did not just inflict physical pain. It attacked the very cohesion of a being. Yet the human resisted. His species had a history written in resilience. They had endured ice ages and famines, had climbed from the mud of their own failures, again and again. Their bodies were fragile, but their will to endure, to protect, was a force the K3 had never truly measured. The man, shaking, began to push himself back to his feet. Every nerve shrieked in protest, but he stood. The disruptive energy sought to break him, but it met a core that was tempered in a different forge. It met the quiet defiance of a doctor staying at a patient's side through the night. It met the stubborn grip of a climber on a cliff face. It met the unyielding love of a parent shielding a child. It was a force the K3, with their love of inflicting helplessness, did not comprehend. You, the man breathed. Each word a victory. We'll not touch her again. The guard, unnerved, fired a second time. The bolt hit the man again, throwing him back against the bench. His body smoked, his clothes scorched. Yet his hand found the edge of the bench, and he began to rise once more. The act was impossible. It defied the weapon's purpose. It defied the K3's entire understanding of lesser species. Got in that moment of stunned confusion, the alien girl acted. Her restored light, flowing freely now, surged. She reached out a hand, not toward the guards, but toward the human. A beam of pure, warm amber light lanced from her fingertips and enveloped him. It was not an attack. It was a gift, a transfer of the same restorative energy he had helped her reclaim. The pain receded. His scorched skin cooled. His breathing eased. She then turned her gaze to the guards. The harmonic resonance from her body shifted, amplifying. It became a tangible wave of sound and light, not violent, but profoundly corrective. It vibrated through the cell, through the K3. To them, it was not painful, but it was intolerable. It was the opposite of the dissonance they cherished. It was harmony. It was wholeness. It was the very concept of things being right. Their minds, attuned to cruelty and fracture, could not process it. They stumbled back, clutching their heads, their weapons falling from nerveless grips. The man stood whole beside her. Together, human and alien, a being once shattered and a being who refused to break, walked past the Incapa.